I'm going to skip chapter 2 and move right into chapter 3. The second chapter is actually a little story of my personal life. It's a history of the reasons for my writing of this novel. And while it makes perfect sense when read in the book, it is not a story in the forest with Albert. I will make chapter 2 available to everyone who becomes a patron and supports my channel, with a grateful heart and much appreciation. I will also make my vegan gingerbread recipe available to my dear patrons, as I shared it with Mother Skunk. And now, chapter 3. Hello, dear ones. I'm Grammy Ann. I'm the author of My Best Friends Live in the Woods, a story about the adventures of Albert, a raccoon adopted by Mother Skunk in an enchanted forest. Each chapter teaches, by example, a way of living with love and cooperation at its heart. There are study questions for discussion after each chapter to serve as a guide to live a mindful life. Our most precious gift to the world is a loving spirit. Come with me to the forest, where animals talk, fairies fly, and the connecting energy that flows through all their lives is love.
Spirit flies to the pink horizon of the forest, where fairies say, come and play, and the animals say, there's a better way, an enchanted land of love.
I asked myself, what is the single most important word? If there is one thing I want to communicate, what would it be? My word, my one single word, is compassion. I believe the universe is infinitely compassionate. I believe it is what all souls are here to learn. My Best Friends Live in the Woods. The Adventures of Albert by Anne Michelle Moracek. Chapter 3. Gingerbread Cookies. Albert's journey began as a baby raccoon. His mother had a lovely home in the hollow of an ancient, now dead, fir tree. He and his mother and sister lived in the hollow about halfway up the old tree. It had once reached for the light and leaned out across the stream that rolled by endlessly below, babbling a lovely lullaby. But it all changed the night of the terrible storm. And not to sound like every other book, it truly was a dark and stormy night. The 3 raccoons were snug in the hollow as the rain came down in sheets. Mother Raccoon had never seen such a downpour, and she was worried and anxious. The stream was rising and soon was out of its banks and flooding a raging river beneath them. The children were sound asleep, but Mother Raccoon tried to peer into the darkness. Then suddenly it was bright as day, and a terrible crack woke the forest. The ancient fir tree snapped and fell into the raging river below, carrying the raccoon family with it. Mother Raccoon sprang into action. She grabbed Albert by the scruff of his neck, and as they bobbed and bumped, she tossed him safely onto the shore. Then she ran back to save his sister, but the tree was still moving down the stream. Albert ran along the shore, trying to keep up with the tree. He could see his mother and sister sliding away. He was going to jump into the water and try to swim to them, but Mother Raccoon cried out, "No, Albert, stay safe!" And that was the last he ever saw of them. He He sat in stunned silence, rain pelting down on him. He was cold and wet and confused. He found another fallen log and crawled under into the dry hollow inside. That night, he cried himself to sleep. But do not worry, for all will end quite well, as you will soon see. For in dawn's first light, he saw a strange creature standing over him. She had black and white striped fur and was wearing a blue apron with ribbons trailing behind her. She sat by the log and held out a gingerbread cookie to the frightened raccoon. "There, there," she cooed. "I heard you crying last night, but couldn't find you in the dark. Have a cookie. I'm famous for my gingerbread recipe." A cookie did sound lovely, and his tummy was rumbly-grumbly, and it smelled, well, all gingerbready. Albert crawled out of the log and accepted the sweet offering. As he nibbled, he began to cry again. "Now tell me why all the tears?" said the black and white striped cook. Albert retold just what I explained to you, but in ever so much more detail, and the gingerbread baker listened and nodded. When he was done, and had eaten a second cookie, she held out her paw. "Albert, I am Mother Skunk. I live in the cave just over there with my 23 children. I don't suppose one more will be any more trouble. Why don't you come and live with me?" Seeing he really had no other option, and deciding he would like a third cookie, Albert reached out and took her paw, and that was that. So now you know how a raccoon came to live in a cave with Mother Skunk and her 23 children, who now Albert thinks of as his brothers and sisters. Chapter 3. Gingerbread Cookies. Discussion and questions. Compassion. Compassion is defined as the sympathetic pity and concern for the suffering or misfortunes of others. It is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. Mother Skunk showed true compassion. She mentioned that she couldn't find Albert the night before in the dark. If we think about the true meaning of this statement, we realize she had left her warm, dry cave and her 23 children to venture out into a raging thunderstorm. She would have been drenched searching in the dark because she heard someone crying. We also know she went out again at first light to search. She anticipated that if she found the crying child, it would by now be hungry, and she took 2 gingerbread cookies to ease their suffering and give comfort. We know she was a good listener and let Albert pour out his story in all its detail. She could have been in a rush to get back to her home and her own children, but she let Albert pour out his emotions. She took action to feed and comfort this strange child. She did not care that he was not a skunk. His strangeness did not concern her in the least. She could have said, "Well, good luck," and turned away. She could have said, "I hope you find your mother," and turned away. But she offered her full measure of compassion. When she held out her hand, she knew full well she was committing to care for, love, and raise this child. He needed her, and that was all that mattered. We can show compassion to others by being kind. When someone is different, or sad, or hungry, we can show compassion by a kind word or by sharing. Volunteering and community service are actions of compassion. Think about your own life. Question 1. Is there someone in your life who needs your compassion? Question 2. How can you show compassion at home, at school, in the community? Question 3. Are there people who have shown compassion to you? I am the composer and performer for all the music in this video. Both audio recordings and the printed scores are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. I will provide the link below. The painted illustrations are also my creation. Prints are available on mybestfriendsliveinthe.woods.com. I wrote this novel because I wanted to teach a way of viewing this beautiful earth where all living things are loved and respected, where everyone is valued for their uniqueness, where awe and magic still exist, where our plant allies heal us and ancient trees have names, a community where each member is included and valued. This is a novel. The chapters are meant to be heard in the order in which they were written. And while each chapter can stand alone, they do build as new characters are introduced and past events are referred to. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The chapters are numbered, so if you're just joining us, be sure to go back and watch from chapter 1